Hello, everyone. I'm Yuta Nakajima, Senior Director at Hauser and Wirth in New York. Thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate our benefit Artists for New York, which is on view at our new location here in Chelsea, as you can see behind me, and also at our Upper East Side Gallery until October 22nd. We hope that you'll make a reservation online to come and see the benefit. We're thrilled to welcome Sally Tallant, the President and Executive Director of Queens Museum, along with celebrated artists Joan Jonas and Mika Rottenberg, to discuss their contributions and practice, as well as their views on the current world we live in. Before the conversation, we're lucky to share with you two films by the artists, each about 20 minutes long. Please enjoy Mika Rottenberg's Spaghetti Blockchain from 2019, followed by Stream or River, Flight or Pattern, Journey, 2017 by Joan Jonas.
Coyote on the shelf, looking out window.
Lion by the window. Wood, colors, covered with writing.
Books nailed to table, surveillance, flashback, movement from mad to bird.
Animal trail, flight patterns, shadows.
Large fox head, paper mache, red mouth, top shelf. looking at coyote.
Tiger mask, orange with black markings.
Squat, bird, green, purple, yellow. Ceramic with interior bell.
Bird on branch, shot, stuffed, brown, varied.
Perched owl on green base. Wood is split, heart-shaped face.
Gray, oversized elephant, painted wood, exaggerated trunk.
Behind, white wooden carved rabbit, gentle.
Hi, everyone, welcome back. So before I introduce our panel, we would like to let you know that this digital event is closed captioned. Should you wish to utilize this function, simply click the closed captioning icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The panel will take questions at the end of the event. If you wish to submit a question, please do so using the Q&A icon. Thank you again for joining. We hope you enjoyed the films. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to the moderator of this conversation, Sally Tallant, along with artists Joan Jonas and Mika Rottenberg.
So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Sally Tallant, I'm director of the Queen's Museum, and it's really wonderful to be invited here this evening to be in conversation with Joan Jonas and Mika Rottenberg. Thank you both for allowing us to show your films in advance of this conversation. It was wonderful actually to sit back and be able to experience my computer in a completely different way than it's been abusing me in the last few months, 6 months, since we've been locked down. I also want to thank Hauser and Wirth for this invitation, and especially Russell, Jutta, Philip and Jocelyn for their support tonight, and particularly for inviting Queen's Museum to participate in this amazing initiative, Artists for New York, which supports the 14 organizations in New York City that I know you'll all see listed when you look into the event. All of the artists that have donated work so generously demonstrate the spirit and the resilience of New York and its arts ecology, and it's such a privilege to have the opportunity to speak today with Joan and with Mika. So I'm going to ask some questions. We're going to have some conversations. If you have any questions you want us to answer, please do write them into the Q&A, and we will pick them up at the end. But I wanted to start, Joan, with you. It's really wonderful that you selected stream or river, flight or pattern journey to share with us this evening, especially when we can't travel, and at a moment where international travel is impossible. Watching that work, I felt like I was transported into many different places, and all of the kind of traces of your travels and encounters in 2017 Could you tell us a little bit about how that experience of travel and the objects and drawing play a role in recalling that experience in the work?
Well, travel has always been an inspiration for me. I mean, I'm very interested in finding faraway places with and learning about other cultures. In this sense, I was very lucky. I just finished the piece in Venice, and which took all my resources. And then I was invited to go to Singapore by Uta Meta-Bauer, and I just took my camera with me. I was interested in certain things like birds and trees, and I was interested in finding material related to that, and then ritual also. And so I first went to Italy, and I went to Italy and then to Spain. And this piece is part of an installation. So there are 3 videos, and birds are a very major part of the 3 together. So you hear their cries a lot when you're walking. It's like really sort of a sound piece. This one in particular, I was invited to go to Vietnam, and I was working with a young artist with the Rolex Foundation. A young artist was my mentee, and I went to visit her. I was very interested in her situation in Vietnam. And so she traveled with me through Vietnam. And having always been interested in paper and making objects out of paper, I was very interested in going to this place they called the Paper Village, where the villages in Vietnam, each village has a certain craft. Anyway, that just gives you the background of this. And so I was working with children for the Venice piece, and I asked 2 of the same children to be in this work. And you see that my collection also being part of this. I collect objects which happen to be animals, in this case, made by untrained people, and so they're very special. And I made a text that described these animals. And so in a sense, seeing the way birds are caged, and there was another video in the same show shot in a place where many birds were kept captive and probably going to be sold. And then bird zoos are very elaborate in the East, and but it's very painful. And so it's a little bit about the distance we have from what we call nature or the environment and how we represent that. And so the drawing becomes part of that chain of representation. And yeah, I don't know if that answers. And then the children, really, I don't ask them, I don't direct them, I ask them to do certain tasks. And so the children are part of my, the group that I work with now. And those 2 children will probably be in my next work. They're not children anymore. One of them is a young man, but so I'm interested in people who are not trained in a sense. I mean, I'm not trained either to be an actress, but yeah, so I was interested in catching certain nuances of the culture in Vietnam, which is very interesting. This paper objects which are burned, it's called the goddess. These are part of a ceremony for the mother goddess. They have a character called the mother goddess in Vietnam. And so all those elaborate paper objects that they spend weeks making are then simply burned. It's part of the ceremony. And I thought that was a very apt metaphor.
That's amazing, actually, because there's so many layers in that work. And, you know, there's a moment where, is that a minor bird where he's going knock, knock? And then, but then you see your protagonist talking, but you can't hear them. And then you can hear the birds in the space. So the kind of layering of sound and images is interesting.
Just quickly, one of my ideas is the idea that we're in one place and yet we're thinking about another place. And we're all related in that way, in this connection.
Yeah, interesting. And I think that, you know, you touched on it, on working with musicians. I mean, you've worked with musicians a lot in the past, but working with children and working with animals and bringing those voices into the work. And I wondered if maybe that could take us a little to you, Mika, because the amazing throat singer that you had in that work. I wonder, I know that I mean, how did you manage to get in touch with them and persuade them to sing in the way that they did? And you know, I do have a question about how you bring together so many different elements, but maybe let's start with voice, because we've come from bird singing to throat singing.
Well, I didn't have to persuade them. It's a very interesting story of how actually that part happened. But I want to just refer back. It's interesting that Joan was talking about the relationship to nature, because I think when I start the work, there's so many ideas, and they're really clear in my mind. But then after the work is done, I tend to, it changes, and it doesn't really matter what was the intention for me. But that's a thread that I definitely, followed with all these kind of hexagons, how the shape of the hexagon kind of comes back through that observation. But the throat singer, they were part of the hexagon. When I say hexagon, a lot of sometimes the work has a shape, and this one is a hexagon. You see the hexagon, but there's also these kind of 6 sites that relate. So one of them is the throat singers. I think the idea of extending one's voice or self into the landscape is something that was really attractive to me, and this kind of pre-verbal sound that meant to communicate through these open plains is something that definitely was interesting, especially in relation to the Large Hadron Collider and these particles moving. And I thought about throat singers kind of like an ancient internet, because it is this kind of energy that moves through particles through the landscape. And that's the way these women people there used to communicate through these sounds. So but the throat singers, I just have a really kind of, think a magical story about how I met them. I researched throat singing, and it's very rare in Tuva and to have women do it, apparently. It's kind of a men's thing, I think, because of the very low voice. It's considered a masculine thing, but there's few women that do it, and Chadora Tumat is one of them. So I've been following. There's not that much about her. A lot of it in Russian or the dialect in Tuvan, so it was also hard to know. And the only website I saw had a link that was in Russia, and I couldn't think about a Russian friend at the moment to help me translate. So there's no way I could actually get to that. And then one day, so this was over time. I wanted to get in touch, and then that one day I said, okay, today I'm going to really sit and try to get her email to see if we can work together remotely. So if I could film her, hire a local crew, and then hire, because I didn't think going to Siberia at the moment was going to happen. And then it turned out that they're on the 25-year anniversary of Daughter of Tuva World Tour, and they're going to be 10 blocks from my apartment in Brooklyn performing in the back of this bar. And they were right there. And that was pretty amazing that I managed to connect with them. And I went to the bar, me and 5 more people were there. They came all the way from Tuva after spending a couple months in Europe, and then in Canada and the US, and then back through Russia to Siberia. So it was like this grand tour, and it's the first time, probably, I don't think they're going to get there anytime soon. So that was an amazing moment. And then once I met them, it was the collaboration started, and I was able to shoot remotely, which also seemed important for the idea of the voice traveling kind of through particles. Able to film something remotely and then kind of receive it through the internet and kind of put it in the work. So
And you know, the work that you presented earlier is incredibly labyrinthine and complicated, and I mean, but very organized as well in the same way. And it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about how, you know, you referred to Hadron Collider. So, you know, Hadron Collider, particle physics, throat singing, autosensory meridian response, video, sound. Like, how do you bring together these multidimensional and allegorical situations? Like, what research processes do you go through to make stories out of these complicated worlds?
Well, I think it's very intuitive, but there's a lot of thought and internal logic. This specific work, it's interesting again with the in relation to John's piece, because I feel like that film is the lens is like so like open, you know, and my film it's like very closed, and I like that kind of relationship, I guess. How do you look at something? I think in this work and specifically was to, I mean, I built this in a way my own hadron collider, visual hadron collider with these particles. So it was an actual set. I have parts of it. So it was a kind of like a microscope to kind of to look at these phenomena. Yeah, these 6 things were interesting to me. Again, I had my ideas back when I made it. Again, I don't know how much sense it makes to, but in relation, I guess it was about humans' relation. If you want to be kind of overall kind of human relation with matter, with materialism and materials, and this kind of, in a way, seduction and bodily respond to matter and materials, and the way we're also deprived of it at the same time. Not we, but I feel like, you know, I mean, I'm lucky to be an artist, so I have some kind of relationship with things that are not just you know, smooth and you know, new, but I think there's still this kind of deprivation of matter. So thinking about this like all these ASMR slime videos and all these things that are always mediated through the screen and different, and then another part is this industrial farming and the potatoes. So again, like relation to the earth and matter in that way. And yeah, there's all these kind of internal logic, but it'll probably be tedious and I won't remember exactly like what I thought at the moment, and I don't know if it matters.
I mean, it's interesting, the relationship with the land. How, you know, Joan, when you gathered all that material, I felt like I'd been to some of those places, and then you're like, wait, where are we? Like, this looks like maybe Vietnam. I was quite pleased I'd spotted Singapore, but like, you know, there is all of those amazing kind of experiences of travel. But what are the processes you go through to pull together a film out of all of that material at the end of the day? Like, how do you make that into a work?
Well, I collect the images and I have the objects, and I come back to my studio. It's like collecting and going to the flea market. I come back to my studio, and then I gradually put it together. I mean, the journey to Vietnam, I call it journey now, but there was another video in the same room. I went to the graveyard in Genoa, and there was a scene where I'm walking through the, I think they call it columbarium. It's the passageway around the graveyard. And so that image and action kind of fed into the content of these 3 pieces together. And then there was another video of shadows that I worked with in a workshop with 5 of my workshop participants, and one of them sang a song, and so her singing plays during the time that you hear the birds singing. So there's a relationship, and I put the pieces together gradually. I didn't have a script. I didn't know what I was going, how, I don't remember actually, that was 3 years ago. You know, I don't remember the details of my process, but I collect and I experiment and I put it together. It's also intuitive a little bit. It's about a journey, this one that you saw tonight. It was my journey to Vietnam. And it's about how Vietnam inspired me. You know, this piece is what resulted from that trip to Vietnam. I really wanted to go there. And I prepared by reading all about the Vietnam War, which has nothing to do with, you know, this, it's not at all part of this piece, but it was a special trip. Being an American going to Vietnam was very, it was special for me. And we didn't talk, the young people, they don't like to talk about it. So of course we didn't discuss it very much. It was mentioned, but with some of the older people, the older artists that I met. So I'm just telling you roundabout, I'm not really answering your question, but
That's fine.
It was a major experience to go to Vietnam. And this is what came out of it.
I mean, you know, it's, how have you both been during this time of not being able to travel? It's interesting because you both have evoked journeys in the work one way or another, either through people or to other places. But has not being able to travel had an impact on you, and how you managing to keep working at this time, or how's that feeling?
I'll just quickly say that it was a relief at the beginning because I travel all the time. You know, I have to pack again. I travel from my work and I travel to perform, I travel to install. So in a way it was at the beginning a relief, and you know, it was more relaxing. I'll just say quickly that, you know, I'm continuing to work, continuing to draw, but I'm not doing major video projects. And I don't have anybody in my studio that like my editor can't come. So it's a very different kind of situation. And it's a finding of oneself within this situation. And also being very aware of what's going on in the world right now, and in our, you know, in New York, for instance, and in with the situation of the inequalities that are coming out because of this. So there are so many other things to now to think about and to be concerned with.
Yeah. What about you, Mika?
Yeah, I think it was a relief at first, indeed. And, you know, I was very lucky to have my home upstate, so I didn't have to go anywhere that was not home already. But I was moving so much that there was a moment of stopping that I was prepared to, because I started reducing travels from before, because I felt like it's not sustainable for me to do that. I wanted to, there was a craving to stay in a way in one place, and acknowledge what's going on in a way. No, I think there's something about constant moving that doesn't allow you to see the world sometimes, as hard as it is. So there's like no escape anymore. I mean, travel is escape, right? In its core way. So there's that. So it's not pleasant. So, you know, necessarily. I mean, it's amazing that, you know, I have a home that I could, you know, be comfortable in, and my studio is part of home, so I don't have to. But I have, for me, I was ready to change some things in the way I work, and this piece really forced, I mean, this situation forced me to really be kind of very local in the, and use as much as possible. I mean, I'm working with a collaboration now, but use as much as possible my mind, and whatever is around me. I mean, I have a big studio here with a lot of materials, so there's a lot around me. So it's not like, you know, I'm just stuck with a pencil, which also could be a way to do something from that as well. But kind of to focus on that, you know, it's on whatever is around. Man, it's what it is. So
it's pretty brutal, isn't it? And I mean, we've all learned to translate contact into mediated screen contacts, and I think that loss of intimacy is quite challenging. I mean, I think in a way, I think you're both really lucky being an artist, because like you can make things out of situations like this. I mean, you touched on it, Joan. So this particular moment, which has been defined by, racial justice, protest, a global pandemic, loss, grief, both of you work with performance and the body and think about staging and placing people or those kinds of conversations or bodies into the world through, making images. How has this moment impacted, or has this moment impacted on how you think about performance and bodies and equity at this time in your work? Is that too complicated? Jumbled a question.
It is complicated. I'm really not focusing on that aspect of my work. I'm going through my archives and putting them in order. That's a huge job. Mm-hmm. But I am working on a new project that isn't necessarily related to performance, but I'm trying to figure out actually how to engage this young man who was in the video you just saw, how to engage him, because he's, how do we work with other people? It's right now pretty impossible in my situation. So what I feel about this moment is I don't think we will understand it until it's over. When it's, I don't know, I'm very curious about how we're going to process this. Will it just disappear and we'll forget about it and move on? Or will we be transformed in some way? There has to be changes, that's what has come up. There have to be changes. And I agree, Mika, we're very lucky to be in our own places and kind of free to do still pretty much what we want to do. It doesn't matter if we don't have certain things, we have plenty. So it's a new awareness, and I'm very curious about the future.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels, I think these things affects me as a person. The work has its own trajectory. So things, are always in the work and in other ways. I'm not an artist that could respond very fast to, although, in a couple works of mine, for example, in Cosmic Generator, there's a lot of things, so a lot of it is staged on the Mexico-US border and the border wall. And I started researching it in 2014. And I ended up shooting there the day of Donald Trump's inauguration. It happened to be the day I was shooting right at the border. There's a lot of weird synchronicity between what was the images that were in the news. Like the other part of the work was filmed in the wholesale market in China. So there's a lot of that, but synchronicity, but it's not, journalism in a way that like the speed of reaction is different, but definitely the idea of how more, and it's like waking up from one nightmare to another. Like you think you're awake and then there's another, and you realize, for me, I realize more and more how these systems that are really messed up, how we're so interlocked in them. Every time there's like this awakening, and then it's like, that get me out of here, like I'm wanting to just get out, and not being able to, from the way we're conditioned to be within the system and function within the system with relative comfort to and it's very hard to find a way out, if there is a way out. But I am also curious and terrified about the future. I think from an artist, that's what the artist is, like, a pretty good profession for that, because you could Once, I mean, just a little, I was forced to be in this like photo shoot, and the makeup artist told me that fashion gives people their dream, and I thought that art gives people their nightmares, in a way. So there's, I don't know, I feel like a lot of these very things that have been in my work for a while are more and more coming to the surface. So it does feel like waking up to that, but who knows how that's gonna end. I don't know.
And yeah, I also, in my work, I always think it's very important to be aware of the world as it is now. And I bring that into the work not in an obvious way, but yeah, well, Mika said it's terrifying and curious. She's curious and terrified. I think many of us are. A friend of mine who's a marine biologist studies systems, and definitely the system is, we see how the system isn't working and how it's broken down. And it's very concerning of how we're going to emerge with all these systems breaking down and being so imperfect, like the healthcare system, for instance. It's a very troubling time. And
I think it's interesting when I said to you both about travel, and you at the beginning, both of you said at the beginning it was fine, and at the beginning was 6 months ago. I think on Friday last week I hit a really gloomy kind of like realization again that we're going to be in this situation for a long time, a lot longer, and the economic impact, the as you say, Joan, the kind of exposure of systemic failures where people don't have access to healthcare, don't have access to work, don't have the support they need, leaves us with a kind of global challenge, and it can be quite crushing, I think, in terms of how to move forward. I think Mika's run away because of that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'll just say
movement in my studio.
I say briefly, in the beginning of this shutdown, I was staying with friends out in Long Island. It was really, it was a very nice place to be. And I started reading The Tale of Genji, which is 1,000 pages, because I was interested in how Japanese women in Japanese writing, and the fact that so many male writers are so famous in the 20th century. And then, in fact, there were many women writers throughout, from 1000, which is when The Tale of Genji was written. So I'll just say briefly that that book got me through the first part, to have one book to read, which I never would have done if I hadn't been shut up. And so from that point of view, well, we're very lucky that we can do that, that kind of thing, and go into things in depth, maybe in a different way.
Well, and stay still. I mean, for me too, I'm hopping around art fairs and biennials and exhibitions, and actually, I just moved to the United States from Europe and haven't been back, and so it's kind of amazing to find yourself in one place and having to navigate what that now means for us moving forward. You referred to systems, and I last or in 2018 I was very lucky to work briefly with Sylvia Earle, who's an amazing oceanographer and activist, and she says of the ocean is large and resilient, but it's not too big to fail. What we're taking out of the sea and what we're putting into the sea are actions that are undermining the most important thing the ocean delivers to humankind, our very existence. And Joan, you've touched on ecological concerns in your work. I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Well, I began to concentrate. I've always done a lot of work outdoors and been very involved with the out of doors and so on, but I began to concentrate on it. I read a book by Halldór Laxness, an Icelandic writer, and the book is called Under the Glacier. So I decided maybe 4 or 5 years ago to do a piece based on that book. And then I thought, oh, glaciers, they're melting. And so then the book my piece became about his poetic narrative about nature but also about the fact that glaciers are melting. And so that's when I began to be concerned and dealing with the subject of the ecological situation that we're in. And I did meet Sylvia Earle.
Oh,
and
wow.
because of working with a piece called About the Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And Sylvia Earle, like many marine biologists, spends a lot of time underwater, which I haven't done. And it's remarkable. She's a remarkable woman. She's developed all these devices for going underwater and exploring. And she says she doesn't eat fish anymore.
I watched a lecture by Sylvia Earle, and since that day, I haven't eaten fish at all. I can't. It completely radically changed my ability to ever do that again.
I think most of us are not aware that fish are sentient beings.
Yeah, and we've already eaten 90% of the fish in the sea.
Yeah. But anyway,
Sorry.
Mika, your work, I'm just thinking about Mika's work. I'm kind of fascinated by it. It's like, and I think that the metaphor is there in more than one, of going down somebody's throat, you know, going to another, going from one reality to another, and you're always going through a tunnel or a throat, or, you know, through your shape, a hole. Yeah, it's really interesting. And then the throat singer, of course, embodies that in a different way. But is that true? Am I right that you're?
Yeah, I mean, I have a fascination with holes. I was just talking to someone about things to reuse in my studio, and apparently everything has a hole in it, various sizes. So, yeah, I think it's I think holes are really interesting, and this idea of sucking inwards. You know, now they think that in the center of the galaxy, what actually we're all being sucked into a giant black hole. So instead of, it's the kind of feminine answer, because if it's not a big bang, it's actually like a hole that sucks us in.
We'll never know that happens.
We will never know. Right, no. Right. So yeah, I think it repeats, and it's not, I think, again, it's intuitive. So it's not like what hole I'm going to treat today, I'm going to think about today. It's really always like, oh, there's the hole again. I think, I mean, we are holes. There's actually, you know, there's a Hebrew prayer you have to do every time. And I know that because, you know, but every time you go to the bathroom, there's a prayer that says, you know, God bless us, make us all full of holes. I don't know why. That's not usually a reference I use at all. Just jumped in. So I think that the hole is a big one. And definitely with the throat singers. And I told you, Joan, I was thinking about your early performances with the people and with the sounds and the, you know, kind of projecting sounds into nature. So, yeah.
And somebody's asked, oh, sorry, go on, Joan.
No, I was just going to say, I love Tibetan horns. I'm sure you've heard them. You know, these very long, they have very long horns, and they make a sound related to your, I mean, to blow them, people have to use their throat in a certain way. So
yeah, it's like extending the throat, you know, that cavity, extending it, which is really interesting. Yeah, and then how, you know, I mean, when you think about how, and then when I talk about particle physics and all that, it's like not something I should be talking about, but if an artist would attempt to do that, the way, you know, all these particles carry through in this mysterious ways is also through these kind of cavities and through these invisible things. So
I have a question here from him. Actually from Russell, who would like to know about the connection between drawing and filmmaking, like drawing with film and drawing with.
Is that? Well, from the very beginning, I'm a visual artist, and I was making sculpture and drawing. And when I began to make performances, I brought drawing into the process. And so performance consists of various actions. And so I brought the action of drawing, the process of drawing into the piece. And so each time I make a new piece, I think, how can I bring drawing into it? So when I began to work with video, I made drawings for the video, just drawing for the camera. Or and then when I have the children draw, I'm always curious about what's happened, what's drawing in performance or drawing for the camera. I never know how it's going to come out, and I'm interested in that, in what happens when you put yourself. It's like a handicap in a certain way, you know, that you don't know exactly how this will affect your drawing. It's not like you're sitting at a table and doing a little close-up pencil drawing where you have total control and you can erase. And no, you have to do it you do it in relation to another situation, to the music, to the space, the movement, your arm. How do you, people who draw, also Matisse uses long sticks, I use long sticks, and you know, devices. You draw with your arm, you draw with your fingers, you draw with your body. So those are just some of the things. And then you draw in relation to the camera, always, when you're recording.
Yeah, I love the idea of, yeah, I find drawing very performative in that way. And I literally draw with not with sticks, but I draw with my thumbs and my butt. And I used to, you know, sit on drawings. I haven't done that recently. It's a good quarantine thing to do, I guess.
Yeah.
But I always thought about it as a kind of a very bodily sensation, you know, all the different ways, the joints and all that, so kind of performative dance, like a little bit, but with just the most basic tool. So yeah, I make a lot of drawings, and that's the base of every work, comes a lot of drawings. There's a relationship with video and drawings because it's the core.
But you work with forms a lot. You're very involved with form. I mean, the form of the forms within the forms and the forms, you know, and how they all relate to each other, right?
Yeah, but that's more in the video. My drawings are very basic and not geometrical, not that way, and they're more like flow charts and, you know, yeah.
I was fascinated by the use of color in your work, Mika. I mean, they're so kind of strong, some of the colors you use, and yet, you know, those funny. What is that round stuff made of? Is it jello? The stuff
Jello, yeah, gelatin.
Jello. Yeah,
yeah, it's a lot of gelatin.
Yeah, but there's a real artificiality to the kind of colors that you.
Yeah, although I try to make everything compostable, all the materials compostable, so they're all edible too. I mean, I wouldn't eat them, but they are all edible.
The sound is very sensual. The sound of cutting those jello things, you know, is very sensual sound.
Yeah, all the sound is made after, and this piece is so much of sound work. It's half sound work, half visual. So, and when you hear it in space, it's a 7.1 surround sound. So the sound really travel around you, and you feel sound being somewhere between an energy and a material. Like it becomes a physical thing, which that's cool.
Do you think that, I mean, you know, there's a real surge of interest in ASMR videos and these kind of like, you know, maybe at this time as well, when people are stuck on their own, do you think people are going to be, have you watched those videos? You must have done.
I watched them at the time for research, and but I thought, you know, when I discovered them online, or as they developed online, my, you know, work from say 2002, 2003 had a lot of ASMR thing, but that was before ASMR was a term, and that was you know, the whole dough and all that was, and the sound. So I think I was always after the ASMR, and then YouTube came. Now I watch TikTok, not YouTube stuff, because that's a whole other level of ASMR. But first I wanted to stop making videos because these kids are doing it so much better, you know. But then, of course, there's other elements to that. But and I had to do my own. I felt like there was a little bit of like a competitive moment with like 13-year-old girls that have like a slime video and have 6 million viewers. I was like, I want to go on that place and, you know, do my own kind of ASMR factory in the studio. So there's definitely that, and I had to get it out completely of my system. I think I'm ready for something else now.
And so, you know, I think this initiative by Hauser and Wirth is, it recognizes the importance of trying to sustain the whole ecology in the city: artists, artist studios, museums, galleries, small galleries, larger galleries. And you both contributed to the work, to the exhibition, which is incredibly generous and hopeful, and of both of you. And I wanted to ask you a question about hope for the future of the city and the arts ecology. Like, what, I mean, you know, it's quite hard. I think we discussed that earlier, but do you have any kind of thoughts about what's happening and how we can get through this? And is it artists or artists continuing to be here in practice that gives you hope at this time? Like, everything feels so difficult to navigate.
Well, we have to have a positive attitude. I think hope is probably, yeah. The belief that we will get through this, and in some way or another. But I think that one thing that interests me is how it might bring, in a certain way, the arts back, because New York became so difficult for young artists to move into and to find a place and to survive. Maybe this will change that. Maybe that's one possibility. Maybe these empty spaces can be used for artist studios. Maybe, you know, there might be another way to function and work as artists.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, no, it's hard to. I think things are not going to be so great for the grand economy, but that's not necessarily bad for artists that are, you know, not the top mega artists, but, you know, artists that need spaces and abandoned spaces and cheap studios. And I think New York was probably more interesting when it was not as wealthy. So there's that. Yeah, I think it was so saturated with yeah, it might be good for that. Who knows?
We don't know, but maybe.
I mean, it is true that, like, artists, you know, this was not a livable city for artists. It is a difficult and expensive city for artists, but like when you walk around in Manhattan now, you know, there's a level of emptiness, and we need artists and poets and people to breathe life back into what is a cultural city. So, you know, can hope that that we can do that, or that one can do that. I wondered if you had any questions for each other, like, in this time.
My dog is my.
Oh yeah, your dog has a question. Excellent.
Yeah.
I speak dog, so
Let's hand over to the dog.
yeah.
Yeah.
My cat is here.
No, I mean, I'm sure I have a million questions, but I have, you know, when I'm put on the spot, I can't think about it.
Me too.
But
I think
I was, yeah.
Well, maybe I'm gonna just check with our audience who we can't see. If you have any questions, please could you pop them into the Q&A so that we can pick those up, and I can read those out if anybody has anything they'd like to ask Joan or Mika. And I think that you know, thank you both for, like,
well, I was very glad. I have to say, I'm very glad to meet Mika.
well, yeah.
Same here.
I've seen your work, of course, and now I see the person who made it, and it's very interesting. And I would have a lot of questions, but not now.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, that's a missed opportunity because yeah, it's so great to meet you, and your work has always been an inspiration. So it's really, yeah. And I think we never met, so that's
No, we never
time
met.
in New
So,
York.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been hiding upstate, but I used to be more in the city. So, but yeah, I guess.
Well, who knows? We might meet again.
You will meet
No,
again.
I think
Have
things,
to
I mean,
be.
on that level, things will open up again. You know, we don't know to what, but they will
Of course,
open. You know,
they will.
They will.
they will, and it's such a tense time now. Now we
Yeah.
just have to
And
go
many
through
left.
the next few weeks and see and vote. And you know, I'm a new voter. I became an American citizen
Congratulations.
in order to vote, and I couldn't just not do it. I was mixed
Of course.
about that. But I decided that, yeah, I want to be American so I could actually, because I live here for 20 years and I want to be an immigrant and to be that kind of American.
Good.
So I went through a lot of hoops in order to vote. You know, and to vote, it's like any relationship, it's compromises. You never learn to love or, you know, love the compromises, you know, so we got to do it.
Well, vote, and anyone who hasn't already, please fill out the census. The deadline was extended. It's really important.
I did it.
Yeah.
I'm scared. I don't want to. I'm so scared of authority, but yeah, I got to do it.
It's important. Otherwise, the resources.
Yeah, there's no reason to because it's secret.
Okay, so I'm gonna, there's no questions have come in, so I'm gonna thank you both so much for allowing us to have a peek into your studio/kitchen and for sharing your work with us this evening. It was really great actually to see the works back to back in terms of how they provoke questions from one another. I really hope that we will soon see each other in the real world. Again, as we circulate, and I really look forward to, well, let's hope that we can see each other with the right news after November the 3rd.
It's so nice to meet you to do this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.